Welcome back. So in the last video we set the Docker up on the virtual host, we pulled down the software, we didn't actually run it, but earlier on I did say we'd be using the Jupyter Notebook port, which is 8888. But there's a secure way to do this rather than just opening the network port, which we could do through Azure, and that is to create an SSH tunnel. So what I've been trying to do with these commands, I know a lot of people are new to command line interface, is to introduce the basic version and then add a bit of sophistication as we go along. So this was our basic SSH command, which we saw before. So we'll just have a little zoom in. So we've got SSH -i, that's our key file there, as your user, and that's the IP address. Interesting point about these IP addresses is these will be reassigned every time we restart our virtual machine. Just something to bear in mind. So all we do is after the key file name we just type, I would paste it but it wouldn't allow me to paste, irritatingly, 8-L 888 colon and then the keyword local host, and all that says is when we make an SSH connection, also if someone tries to connect to that remote machine on port 8888, it will be the same as to the local machine on 888.888. We now connect and you can see this is our Ubuntu prompt there. It says as a user, that's our host name we set up at the start. You can see of the 30 gig disk we allocated at the start, we've actually now used 12.5% because we've downloaded that container. What we did before, remember all the Docker commands need to be prefaced by sudo because we run with administrator access. And now we do sudo and we want to run that application. So we say sudo docker run. There's a couple more bits here to go. And we say the name of the host. I'm going to do the same thing as before, which is we'll just see the basic thing working and then we'll add some more parameters. Remember our container there? It was 21s actually. We say colon latest. I'm not sure about this underscore, by the way. So docker run and we'll just see what happens. The difference between containers and virtual machines is containers start instantly. And that means that if we're not quite sure about a parameter, we can start and we can stop and we can add things and so on. So there you are, our container is now running. And as far as it's concerned, it's running the server on port 888. But that is not the same 888 as in the Ubuntu host. So what we need to do now is actually map the server port, that is the port on the virtual host, to the container. You see containers also have random IDs. So if we went to port 888, I said we've mapped to our local machine. Let's just check this out. It'd be fun if it worked, but I don't think it will. And we say got it wrong. Um, no, I've got that in a Google search box rather than in the wrong place. A synonym for localhost is 127.0.0.1, which sometimes is preferable. So you can see that this actually wouldn't work because the connection isn't complete. So we go back to our uh, where are we? We go back to our thing. We go back to our PowerShell, and you see it tried to connect and it couldn't. That's because the port mapping's not there. So you just hit Control C, it stops the server. We go back to the Azure prompt, and what we need to put in here is specify the port mapping. So that's saying map port 888 on the container. So that is Jeremy Allen KF703221S latest. Map that to the Docker port, the port in the instance, sorry. And it looks just the same, except that should now be accessible through our local tunnel. We'll just pause the capture a second. So now we're going to go back to our browser. I'm actually using Firefox just because I can keep one browser instance separate, works just as well as the others basically. And now I'm going to see if we can access port whatever. So we've gone from the error before and it now asks us for a password. So the reason the Jupyter is passworded is basically the Jupyter developers say that you cannot run a server, an application on the internet without putting some protection in place. So I've put a standard password in. You'll find that in the show notes. For some reason, I'm not going to tell you what the password is over the video which is going on YouTube. I enter the password, save, and now we are running a the module software. We've got Jupyter Notebooks, and this is running in the cloud on an Azure server. And the point about the Azure servers, of course, we're running because of our, we're mindful about credit. We're using a very simple instance, but of course we could have configured something absolutely massive, get instant access to 128 gig machine, GPUs, super fast network connections, but we're using this as a learning environment. We'll also be setting the same thing up on our PCs. Okay, so I'm going to stop this bit here, and in the next session we'll go on to basically set up some notebooks.